This is new today. Secretary of State Antony Blinken landing in Israel just a short time ago, really ahead of tomorrow's meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about a crucial ceasefire deal. The Prime Minister's office feeling positive about the negotiations, saying, quote, the team expressed cautious optimism to the Prime Minister regarding the possibility of advancing a deal based on the latest American proposal. But there are major roadblocks remaining, aren't there? Fears of an Iranian attack looming over the region, Hamas's hardline new leader, and those anti-Israel protests already beginning ahead of this week's Democratic National Convention. So joining us for more on the situation there is retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Anna.
So Israeli and American negotiators, they're expressing optimism as we're hearing about the ceasefire deal, but it just feels like we've been here before. How does this feel different to you?
Well, first, I join you. I'm not overly optimistic. What I am is I believe there's headway being made, but some of the really key issues I don't think are resolved. I don't think the issue of the corridors of how you isolate Gaza from potential weapon supplies and things like that, I don't think those have been properly resolved yet to a way that Israel can agree to this agreement. So while I appreciate that Secretary of State Blinken's there, that there'll be talks in Cairo, I'm not overly optimistic that there'll be a solution to this problem in the next week.
Yeah, well, they really do want to get it done. Hamas and Hezbollah, they're both proxies of Iran, right? Would it be fair to say that Iran has the final say in these negotiations, or who do you think really has the upper hand?
So it's hard to say with Hamas. So certainly they have an influence, and certainly in any issue involving Hezbollah or the IRGC proxies in Iraq and Syria, Iran has the final word. With Hamas and the Houthis, they're a little bit more independent. They've been able to do things on their own. But I believe that eventually Iran is certainly holding off right now to allow Hamas to kind of explore what's the best deal they can get.
The ugliness of this war, I mean, it's really just makes your heart hurt, doesn't it? But the U.S. has moved forces into the region, and so this is making people pay attention even more. It's all in an attempt to stabilize the situation, including a nuclear submarine and a carrier attack group there. Do you think these assets are quite helpful? Is it enough to ward off an Iranian attack?
So, look, I think we're bringing them here for two reasons. The first is for deterrence. We've brought a carrier strike group and an extra guided missile submarine, the Georgia. That is a show of force to Iran that we are seriously going to back up Israel. In addition, I should mention there are Air Force assets, increased Air Force assets at our bases in the Middle East. And so I think that's a show of deterrence. The question of whether we'll use them to actually impose costs on Iran should they do something is something else. We've come up to that line many times, but not actually done the kind of strikes against Iran that would probably deter, that would long-term deter Iranian aggression against Israel. So I think it's a two-step process. Certainly the first step's been achieved of showing Iran that we mean to back Israel.
Right, the show of force there without the escalation. Protesters are already beginning to demonstrate in Chicago ahead of the DNC, kicking off tomorrow. How closely do you think Israelis are watching American politics and the DNC? And what do you think that they really think about the protesters?
Well, first, I think they're watching it very closely. Israel only has one true ally, and that's the United States. One ally on which they can rely for the supply of arms they need to hold off Hezbollah, Iran, Hamas, the Houthis, the IRGC groups. You know, they have a 6 or 7 front war, potentially, depending how you count it. There's only one country that credibly, reasonably stands by them, and that's the United States. So the future leader of the United States matters to them. So if one of the two choices is being selected here in Chicago, then they care very much and they want to hear what they have to say. These protests are a little rattling because I think it shows that the United States is starting to have, there's a very strong undercurrent in the United States of at least anti-Zionism, if not anti-Semitism, in approaching how, our support for Israel and questioning whether we should be the supporter of last resort for Israel against all these different threats. So I think they're very concerned. They should be concerned. What we saw on the campuses last spring and what I think we'll see again this fall should be very disturbing when you see, this kind of anti-Israeli and sometimes anti-Semitic expression on campus.
We've been thinking for over a week that we may see some retaliation from Iran, vowing to avenge the death of the Hamas leader. Why do you think that hasn't happened yet?
I do think they're waiting to see how these negotiations go. They can wait a little bit. They waited a full 2 weeks after the assassination of the IRGC leader at the annex to their embassy in Syria. That was from April 1st to April 14th. This last the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail was on 31 July. I think they can wait a little bit longer till after the convention and after the Cairo talks, but eventually they're going to do something. How it's metered, that'll depend on what they're how proportional it is or how escalatory it is will matter based on how the negotiations go, what they feel the United States response might be. There'll be a lot of factors that go into it. I don't think the Iranians have landed on their final answer yet.
Well, we appreciate that valuable insight. Retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery, thanks for joining us. Have a great Sunday.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
37 minutes after the hour. The DNC kicking off tomorrow. Up next, the advice the RNC chair is giving to Democrats for a smooth convention. And don't forget, NewsNation will have special team coverage of the DNC. I know I keep telling you this because I want you to come to us. You have a lot of choices, but we are the best. Tune in tomorrow starting at 8 o'clock Eastern. More news for All America on the other side.